There are machines so gigantic that they defy all human logic. Objects so enormous that they seem as if they were designed for another planet. But there is one aircraft that takes that idea to an entirely different level. A true giant of the skies, capable of carrying thousands of people, with wheels so immense that a single one surpasses the size of an entire truck. A colossus so long that, from certain angles, it becomes impossible to tell where its structure actually ends. At first glance, it looks like an optical illusion, yet it is completely real. For decades, this engineering monster has fascinated aviation experts, travelers, and curious minds from around the world. Its size breaks records, its dimensions challenge the imagination, and its existence proves just how far human capability can go when limits seem impossible to overcome. But the most astonishing part is that behind every meter of its gigantic structure lies a fascinating story. A story of ambition, innovation, technical challenges, and decisions that forever changed the aviation industry. How was it possible to build such an enormous machine? What secrets are hidden within its design? And why is it still considered one of the 15 largest aircraft ever built? Stay until the end, because you are about to discover details that seem straight out of a science fiction movie, including figures so astonishing that it is hard to believe this giant can actually leave the ground. When we think of airplanes, we usually imagine aircraft capable of carrying a few hundred passengers. Extraordinary machines, certainly, but still within limits our minds can easily comprehend. However, there are exceptions so colossal that they completely redefine the concept of air transportation. Our protagonist belongs to an extremely exclusive category. A category reserved only for the titans of the sky. From the moment someone stands before it for the very first time, the feeling is difficult to describe. No matter how many photographs they may have seen beforehand, no image can truly convey the real magnitude of such a structure. Visitors often experience the exact same reaction. They look up. They stare at the seemingly endless fuselage. They watch the gigantic wings stretching toward the horizon. And then they try to process what they are actually seeing. Some even claim they feel as small as ants while standing beside one of its wheels. And that is not an exaggeration. Each of those wheels possesses extraordinary dimensions. Comparing them to conventional vehicles becomes inevitable. In some cases, a single wheel appears larger than an entire automobile. Its immense size is not a matter of aesthetics. It is a fundamental necessity. When an aircraft reaches such extreme dimensions, weight becomes one of the greatest engineering challenges ever faced. Thousands of tons must be carefully distributed across the runway. Every component must withstand tremendous forces. Every landing involves massive mechanical loads. Every takeoff demands perfect coordination between engines, landing gear, and structure. Building something like this is not simply a matter of making it bigger. It means solving completely new problems. Problems that had never existed before in the history of aviation. And that is precisely where the adventure began. The adventure that would forever transform the way humanity understands the limits of flight. To truly understand the magnitude of this giant, we must first travel back several decades and examine a fundamental reality of modern aviation. As the world became increasingly connected, the need to transport larger numbers of passengers and greater amounts of cargo quickly became a strategic priority for airlines, manufacturers, and engineers alike. For years, aircraft grew steadily in size. Each new generation introduced improvements in efficiency, range, and capacity. But eventually, some specialists began asking what seemed like an impossible question. What if an aircraft could transport massive numbers of passengers in a single flight? The idea sounded outrageous. Many experts believed there was a physical limit that simply could not be surpassed. Increasing size meant increasing weight, fuel consumption, structural complexity, and operational risks. Every additional meter created new challenges that multiplied the difficulty of the project. But the history of engineering has always been written by people who refuse to accept the word impossible. Entire teams of designers began developing revolutionary concepts. They analyzed advanced materials. They studied gigantic structures. and they performed thousands of simulations to determine whether such an aircraft could actually become a reality. The calculations were extraordinarily complex. The wings had to withstand immense loads throughout every phase of flight. The fuselage needed to endure tremendous stresses without compromising safety. The engines had to generate astonishing levels of power to propel a structure weighing hundreds of tons. Every component represented its own challenge. Even seemingly simple elements became monumental engineering problems. The doors, for example, required specialized systems. The fuel tanks reached astonishing dimensions. The electrical systems contained miles upon miles of wiring running throughout the aircraft. And then there was the landing gear, one of the most impressive components of any giant airplane. When an aircraft reaches extraordinary dimensions, a few wheels are no longer enough to support such immense weight. That is why engineers developed highly sophisticated landing gear systems composed of multiple wheel assemblies capable of distributing enormous loads across the runway. The result was breathtaking. The individual wheels reached dimensions that surprised even the most experienced professionals in the aviation industry. An average visitor could spend several minutes simply staring at them, trying to comprehend how a machine so massive could move across the ground with such apparent ease. But the wheels were only a small part of the story. The real marvel emerged when the engines began to roar. Thousands of components came to life simultaneously. Hydraulic pumps, electronic systems, computerized controls, and countless safety mechanisms, all operating in perfect synchronization. Everything had to function exactly as intended. The smallest error could lead to enormous consequences. That is why every single element was engineered with extraordinary levels of precision. Before allowing such a giant to leave the ground for the first time, engineers conducted countless tests. They analyzed vibrations, structural deformation, aerodynamic behavior, and material resistance under extreme conditions. It was a colossal gamble. A gamble that would forever change the history of high-capacity aviation. And when the moment of the ultimate test finally arrived, thousands of people watched in anticipation. No one knew for certain whether this colossal machine would fulfill expectations, or become one of the most ambitious experiments ever attempted in modern aviation. What happened next left the entire world absolutely astonished. The day of the final test arrived with a mixture of excitement, uncertainty, and anticipation. Engineers, technicians, pilots, and observers all knew they were witnessing a historic moment. Standing before them was one of the most extraordinary flying machines ever built. From a distance, it looked like an entire building slowly moving down the runway. Its size distorted perception itself. The service vehicles surrounding it looked like toys. The workers appeared as tiny figures moving beside a mountain of metal designed to conquer the skies. And then, the engines began to increase power. The atmosphere changed completely. The roar was deep, steady, and immensely powerful. A vibration traveled through the ground as tons of thrust began pushing the gigantic structure forward. Slowly at first, then faster, and faster. The spectators watched without taking their eyes off it. As it accelerated down the runway, the aircraft demonstrated that years of design, calculations, and testing were finally about to be challenged under real-world conditions. The speed continued to rise. Hundreds of tons surged forward with astonishing force. The wings began generating lift. Every system operated exactly as intended. And then, it happened. The enormous landing gear no longer carried the aircraft's full weight. Little by little, the giant left the ground and rose into the sky. The crowd erupted with emotion. What had seemed almost impossible for so many years had suddenly become reality. The giant was flying. And not only was it flying, it was doing so with a level of stability that surprised even many specialists. The tests proved that the design worked. The systems responded perfectly. The structure endured the demands of flight. And the engines delivered all the power required. A new benchmark in aviation had been born. As the years passed, this colossal aircraft became a symbol of technological innovation. Thousands of passengers traveled inside it. Millions of people admired its enormous silhouette at airports around the world. Its presence always triggered the same reaction. Even professionals who spent their lives working in aviation admitted that seeing it up close was an experience difficult to forget. Its dimensions seemed to challenge common sense itself. The numbers remained astonishing. The length of its fuselage, the span of its wings, the size of its engines, and the immense dimensions of its wheels. All of it placed this aircraft among the most extraordinary giants ever created by humanity. And although new technologies and more efficient designs eventually emerged, its legacy remained untouched, because this aircraft represents something far greater than numbers. It represents humanity's ability to imagine the impossible, and then make it real. Every rivet, every panel, every component tells the story of thousands of people who worked tirelessly to prove that limits exist only until someone decides to surpass them. Perhaps that is why it continues to fascinate entire generations. Because when we watch a giant of this scale rise into the sky, we are not simply watching an airplane. We are witnessing ingenuity, perseverance, vision, proof that humanity will always find new ways to go farther, higher, and beyond what once seemed possible. And that, more than its size or its records, is the true reason why this colossus remains one of the most impressive flying machines of all time. And now, I want to ask you a question. After discovering the dimensions of this giant of the skies, would you dare to travel aboard an aircraft this enormous? Let me know your answer in the comments because I want to read every opinion. And if this giant amazed you, just wait until you see what's coming in our next documentary. There is an aircraft so unusual and so powerful that many experts consider it one of the most incredible flying machines ever built. Its story is filled with secrets, records, and moments that seem almost impossible to believe. So make sure to subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss that next journey. If you enjoyed this documentary, share it with someone who loves aviation, technology, or stories that push the limits of imagination. With a single click, you can help us continue creating content like this. Thank you for joining us until the very end of this incredible adventure. And remember, whenever you think you've seen the most impressive machine in the world, there is always another one, even more extraordinary, waiting to be discovered. See you in the next documentary.